things, and particularly those three things kind of feed back to each other. You know, can you have community without having a strong culture? Can you have culture without having connection? Can you have connection without having community? And so this almost like triangular type of situation, pending copyright or something, whatever that was good stuff.
No, that was good. I could tell you just, I was like, I could tell you were like, I ain't never done that before.
Yeah, I was like, wait, somebody might take this. I was like, nah. You know, we here. So
I feel that. What is good, y'all? It is your boy, Jonathan Dumas, and this is Highly Visible and a Little Misunderstood. Excited to be with y'all this week. I really, really am. We just wrapped our theme a couple weeks ago on Black masculinity, where we talked about being Black and demand. And we learned a lot of stuff, had some great conversations, had some interesting comments from folks. But overall, what we learned is that folks want to talk about this because there's so many nuance and complexity to it, and people are constantly trying to figure that out and what that means. There was some learnings and takeaways, one of which was it would have helped to probably have some women on there. It would have helped to have other people that like literally do this for a living and talk about this, maybe write about this, instead of just talking about stories, just given the weight of the conversation, right? And I could have did a better job of navigating the conversations, to be quite honest. But overall, super fun. If you haven't listened to those, go check them out. They were I really enjoyed them, and had a lot of great feedback from folks. So go ahead and tap into those. I wanted to personally invite y'all to sign up for our email list. We have an email list. There is a box that you can click somewhere around here, or you can scroll down to the show link, our show description, and sign up. We're going to tell you when our episodes drop. We're going to share other dope things that are happening with the show. Hopefully merch is coming soon. I've been saying that for 2 years, but it will come eventually. But speaking of merch, when you sign up, we will send you not one, but two free stickers, just as a thank you, because we appreciate you so much. So go ahead, click that link, sign up. You'll get all the stuff. Anyways, this week we start a new theme, and this is near and dear to my heart, because I'm a business owner, and this new theme is all on entrepreneurship. It's all on business ownership, particularly with BIPOC folks. So it's called Entrepreneuring While BIPOC. We're going to be exploring how our identities play into the work that we do, the jobs that we created, the things that we're putting out into the world. Because I really think that they do. Our identities influence what we do every single day. And so I wanted to explore that more. And I cannot wait for y'all to listen and hear from my fellow entrepreneurs, because I've been a business owner for 3 years, and it is really hard. All that stuff that you hear on the internet about entrepreneurship and you just do it and hustle, grind. No, they're full of it. It's really hard. It's exhausting. Stranger relationships. You are constantly working. You don't make a lot of money in the beginning unless you get some really cool processes. All the things, right? But overall, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Even though I, face all kinds of insecurities that I didn't know I had every single day, I am doing something that I feel like I'm created to do as an organizational psychologist, working with companies, doing like people leader development, and working one-on-one with Black millennials wanting to experience career joy as a coach. Like, this is stuff that I like enjoy and live and breathe, and I'm just excited that there are other people like me that want to make positive change in the world, that are doing it in the work, in their entrepreneurship. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be hearing from some of them, chopping it up with some of my dope friends about their journey, about their stories, and listening to the lessons they've learned, and getting all that wisdom they're going to drop, all the things. And today is no different, because today we got a powerhouse, Theon Freeman. Shout out Theon. So excited for y'all to hear this conversation. He is a dynamic entrepreneur, event producer, strategist, wedding officiant, deacon. And Theon's journey spans from tech startups to community work to all kinds of things. And he's here to share his incredible story of leaning into discomfort, embracing authenticity, and the joy of building community and connection. But before we dive into that conversation, I just wanted to introduce y'all to a new segment. And that segment is called Hidden in Plain Sight, Stories We Missed. And so this segment, we're going to be talking about stories or a little bit of news that you probably missed and why you should care about it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, y'all. Today's story is a big one. So the USDA has finally decided to make good on a promise to address discrimination against black farmers. Now, I know this sounds far-fetched. I know that black folks don't trust the government. I barely trust the government. I barely trust the doctors. But this time, it's actually real. So a little bit of context. Back in the day, and by that I mean decades ago, which is not really that far away, black farmers faced all kinds of discrimination from the USDA. We're talking about denied loans, unequal treatment, you can name it. You can probably imagine it, right? And while it might sound like ancient history, the effects of this discrimination have had ripple effects through generations, making it impossible for these farmers to stay open, right? But now, in a plot twist we all needed, the USDA is issuing payments to these farmers to make things right. They're not just talking about pocket change here, y'all. We're talking about a significant amount in reparations, the kind that make a real difference in these farmers' lives. And get this amount, right? The total amount that's being paid out is $2.2 billion. That's billion with a B, capital B. Pay that money. Bring the brink trucks, y'all. It's a step towards justice and equity, and it's high time we acknowledge the efforts. But what I'll say, and as I've said before on the show, let's not pat ourselves on the back because this is long overdue. And this story is just a reminder that the fight for equality and justice is always, and I mean always, ongoing. And it's about holding institutions accountable and ensuring that they do right by everyone, especially the folks that they themselves marginalize. So let's raise a metaphorical glass to the USDA for finally paying these farmers their reparations. Hopefully the rest of us get ours, right? But most importantly, to the resilient black farmers who never gave up hope. All right, y'all, that is it for Hidden in Plain Sight, stories we missed. Stay tuned for the next one next week. But let's get to Theon Freeman and his incredible entrepreneurial journey. Theon, welcome to Highly Visible and a Little Misunderstood. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend. How are you doing?
Of course. I'm doing well today. Yes, I'm doing well today. Usually when people ask me how I'm doing, I have to then step back and think, oh, wait a minute, today's Friday. Okay. And this week has been good. Okay, cool. I'm doing well today.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. That reminds me of a high school teacher I had. And she was like, I had to start asking people if they actually give a fuck. So she did her own little social experiment. And when somebody asked her how she was doing, she was like, do you actually care? Do you give a fuck about it? And she would say it like that. And it caught a lot of people off guard. And there were some people that were actually cared. So I appreciate the honesty in the response. I just remember that hearing that in sophomore or junior year. And that's always I want to be more honest about when somebody asks me how I'm doing. So I love that.
It's true because a lot of folks just want, they use it as a flippant question or just throwaway of small talk. And it's just okay, well, know that if you ask me that and you don't really want to hear my answer, then that has already kind of put a little thing in my head about what the intentionality kind of looks like. And so I don't want to use that as judgment, but also it's just then you don't have to ask it. We can just kind of move forward.
Yeah, it's almost if it is I just want you just let's just be upfront about this. What do you need? I'd rather you just ask the thing or do the thing instead of pretending, because you're absolutely right. From then on, I actually might be less inclined to even hear anything or even be more receptive or less receptive to anything you have to say after that, because you actually don't care, right?
Yeah.
We're already getting into it. So I know you, obviously, but I would love for you to just introduce yourself to listeners, everything like that. And if it's any indication, that little snippet right there is any indication how this conversation is going to go, I just want people to know the dope ass person you are, Theo. So go ahead.
Oh, dang, okay. Well, I'm dope. That's just it.
Yes,
And
hell
so,
yeah.
no, my name is Theon Freeman. At this point in my life, I have a lot of commas. And so I am an event producer, an event strategist. That's in person and virtual. I'm a wedding officiant. I'm a deacon at my church. I have community events. I am a brother. I am a son. I am a friend. I care about a lot of shit.
Yes.
The most important for me has been understanding who I am in all the spaces that I am and being more intentional and authentic in the way in which I communicate and connect with others. I love community, culture, and connection. Those are my three C's, and also my values. Um, hmm. There, at some point, there will be coach on there. Right now, I show up as coach for people, but I'm definitely one of those people with agency and titles and all these different things. Still working on allowing myself to be in all the spaces that I naturally show up in.
I love that that intro of yourself. I think and we had a lot. We talked before, like I don't know, month, 2 months ago, whatever. And we talked for a while about like this this identity piece, this like how do we introduce ourselves, like feeling the word is not uncomfortable because I don't feel like that sufficiently captures like that feeling, but like almost enclosed in boxes when I try and introduce myself as like just coach. But I love how you said like I have a lot of commas about who I am, and I just really, really, really love that. So I think I'm gonna take that if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
And honestly, that came out of what is it? Jack of all trades, master of none. And I think like a lot of other, I guess, stories or sayings or whatever, we were only really taught a socialized part of it. And so, like, it's actually jack of all trades, master of none, and sometimes that's better than a master of one. And so
Ooh.
that last piece was like something that kind of plagued me for a very long time. Like, because I didn't know I didn't know it, and I just always thought that I had to have a very specific train of thought. I had to have a very specific path, and then and then naturally, as I got more inquisitive around who I am as an individual, then I recognized that we're more. And then I heard that from a coach. And then once she told me that, I swear, like for a moment, like I even got teary eyed because in that moment I felt so much more seen and understood. Because I was like, no, I can do a lot more things than just like what society thinks I do. And so, in the same breath, too, still trying to figure out marketing, like that's just real. Like, I don't know, like, so we'll see.
Yo, so that is so funny because I literally just had a conversation this morning, hella early. I was so tired. But I was on another podcast, Career Combat. Shout out Kelly Combat. But they it was so funny. She was like, yeah, like if you could like name a movie of all the things that you do, what would you say? And I was like, I said The Maverick Man, but I feel like that's like basic as fuck. I would actually say, what is that man doing? Like that would be the title of my movie, because like trying to market myself and tell people what I do, it is so difficult. It is much easier to talk about my passions and then talk about the through line between them, which is I care deeply about people. I believe deeply in authenticity. And joy is at the center of all of it, right? And we have that in common, that joy aspect, right? And so I think that like to boil me down into like I just do this one thing or I just do this one thing. Again, like I said earlier, like I just feel so enclosed because like that's not who I am, right? And the question I hate the most is like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm talking to you right now, so like, I don't know. Like ask a more real question, and that more real question to me is like, what do you care about? Like, what are you passionate about? What excites you? Because we could talk all day. We could talk all day about those things. But again, it's like the marketing piece, like how the hell do you market that? And then also like, but also we live in a work culture that tells us, because I had multiple conversations about this, that you need to niche down, that you need to be focused, that you need to do that. Hence the what was the saying? It's the master of
Jack of all trades
and master of none, right? And so
yeah
we're already being told and fed this narrative that like if you do all these things, you're not going to be a master. And mastery,
yeah
expertise, all of these things are much more valued than somebody who is really, really good at a lot of different things, which is
and let's also just step back for a moment and take out the master, because that within itself
Theon
is rooted in too many bullshits.
Yes.
So it's like, so was a jack of all trades, main of one? Like, I don't even know how people like, what do
primary? I don't know.
Right? Like, okay.
The grand, I don't know, whatever. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Can we talk about your values real quick? Because I love this, and I think that they feed into all of the things that you do, which are all wonderful. Yeah. So you said community, culture, and connection.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out first where I want to go with this, because I'm curious about multiple things, because I love all these.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the first question that comes to mind is, how did you land on these 3 C's for you? Community, culture, and connection.
Yeah. And so, that is a good question.
Yeah.
When did I land on them?
Take your time. Let them use you.
I'm pretty sure. Okay. I'm pretty sure I landed on them when I used to work at this place called the Center for Social Innovation. And so that place and job, like, it was a social impact co-working space for change makers and such. And that place just kind of changed a lot of the different things in my world. We'll get into that. But at one point, I was talking to a researcher, Joan Ball, who was just working with the team. She was also a member, and we were talking about the idea of the North Star. And some folks have North Stars. That's what they do and how they go back to the singular that we were talking about earlier. But also some folks have constellations. And sometimes when you don't necessarily have a North Star, it feels troubling. It feels contentious. It feels like anxiety ridden, or really that's how it felt for me. But then when I was introduced to this idea of the constellations, then I could really kind of step back and see what are all the things that I like, and how I show up in this world. Community, culture, and connection originally really outlined a lot of the roles that I took. And so community was always one of them, even though I didn't know that was the name for it at the time. Connection I was always client facing in all these different pieces. And culture, I believed in a strong work culture. As I then started to move forward and really look inwards and look at what authenticity looked like for me, I recognized that, yes, those were present in the things that I did for quote unquote work, but also they were present in the way in which I just kind of lived my life and related to the different aspects. And so at this point, everything that I do tracks back to those 3 things in some sort of fashion. And then since then, I've kind of been rocking with it. I think that, and a combination of back to the marketing aspect, like, real talk, I don't read enough. And that's my own judgment, but also I just don't read enough. But when I do have conversations, I do learn very well from having conversations with people, and that's how I retain different aspects. And I remember when, I can't remember who said it, but from a marketing perspective, if someone hears 3, like, they're going to remember certain things. And so, and then now you have 3 C's. And so if you don't remember anything about me, you're going to walk away remembering the culture, community, and connection, and depending on, which one comes first in that line.
Yeah. I love that too. And what's interesting is that, like, oftentimes folks think, or at least I do, I'll speak more generally, or more about me, is that, like, somebody sat for like 5 minutes and they come up with these incredible values, individual values that, like, are incredibly impactful and they're long lasting, all these different things. So community, culture, connection, like, that sticks. That's so, like, to me, that brings up so much, all 3 of those things together, separate, all that stuff. But, like, there's an absolute story for each and every one of those. And so even as you were sharing, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that's so good. Like, I even get more, like, curious about, like, how does community come out in your work? How does culture come out in your work? How does connection come out of your work? Now, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who wears different hats, just flipping them off as, on and off as you please, you know what I'm saying? So I just really do love that. And like, you take me as somebody who, thinks and ponders, right? That intentional contemplation. And so I just want to just say, I appreciate this, like the intentionality behind community, culture, and connection. Because I know coming up with something like this is not easy. And the follow-up question would be like, how do these three things show up in your work, like community, culture, and connection?
One, I appreciate that. And I think, like I mentioned before, everything that I do kind of tracks back. And so particularly with the community, my last formal role in an organization was head of community. And before that, when I was at CSI, I was facilities and membership services, but at the end of the day, I was also community. And so the way in which I communicated with folks and the way in which I encountered these spaces and honestly held these spaces, community has just been really important to me. I recognize that, I'm trying to figure out when, I think it was when I got to CSI of what community actually was. Like I knew that the way in which I relate to others and show up with, and the folks who showed up and naturally gravitated towards me has always been a kind of like anchor. And then later on, it was the language of, oh, that's community. That's what feels good about that. And so then I also, in working with coaches, I recognize that the communities I like to create are the ones that I don't feel like I'm a part of. And so at one point, I started a Time for Healing. That was right after George Floyd was murdered. With my friend, I started that group because as Black men, we needed a place to just show up and just be us. And so I knew that I was missing that type of connection with Black men, started a Time for Healing with West. Or a couple months ago, I want to go to an open mic night, but I want to be more intentional. So I said, okay, well, can I just do one that will get people there to really kind of just feel vulnerable and be themselves? So I did one on mental health. And then that kind of started off an open mic series. And then, and then a friend of mine, she felt very passionate about environmental sustainability, and I too, but this was really in helping with her, and she wanted to galvanize community. So great. Let's go ahead and help her plan this. And now that steps more into community. And so the community through line, ultimately, I feel like that might even be the biggest of the three, because a lot of these things, and particularly those three things, kind of feed back to each other. Can you have community without having a strong culture? Can you have culture without having connection? Can you have connection without having community? And so this almost like triangular type of situation, pending copyright or something, whatever that was some good stuff.
No, that was good. I could tell you just, I was like, I could tell you were like, I ain't never done that before.
Yeah, I was like, wait, somebody might take this. I was like, no. We here. So
I feel that. Hey, get that. You need to put that, go in Canva immediately. Put that in Canva.
Listen,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so with the community aspects being there, I think now too, for instance, I look at my, when I officiate weddings, that's a community, but that's also a connection. But then that specific type of connection allows me to, yes, I get to communicate with the folks that are there and I'm hearing their love stories, but I get to step out and get to witness their love. And so now I get to witness the connection between the two people that are there. Yeah. And so that's where all these things, they have the direct meanings of what they are, but then they get to be nuanced in the way in which they show up for what I'm doing in that moment. Or I'm starting a role with, like, it's a contract role as a moderator around culture change and some of those interviews and such. And then now that's going into the community aspect, into the connection aspect, I guess technically, and community, because you're building that over time. But this is really about, impartial interviews to get better culture at organizations. So that's where it now just like, if I'm doing it, does it track? Yes, it does track. Does it bring me joy? Yes, it does. Great. And we kind of go from there.
I really do like that. And even the idea of like how each of these three things are feeding into each other. It's so funny. I've had that same feeling too with like my technically 4, but it's really 3 values, right? Because I just didn't feel right for me. Yeah, didn't really have. It didn't feel good to have 4, but whatever. But it's joy, authenticity, community, equity. But like it's more so the 3, joy, authenticity, and then equities. How is equity showing up in every aspect of those values, right? So I even think about this as like, can I truly be authentic, or can I truly be joyous and inauthentic? Absolutely. I don't think you can. Like, I think I need to show up as myself to actually experience true joy. Can I be authentic within a community? Can I show up joyous within a community? Like that, when I'm in community or people see me where I can show up, like it's all those things that they're feeding into each other. And then how is equity showing up in all of those different things? Like very similar, different, but very similar idea. And I love how like even the connective tissue there.
I think one thing I gotta add is, at this stage of my life, I've also recognized how much community actually drives me. And so I would say that I am nothing without my support systems, and my support systems are all based in community. And so from the church that I go to and I'm a part of, and being able to be a queer Christian in an accepting queer Christian space, that's one community. Austin was on your podcast already. And 2 of the communities that he created, a Man Cave and the Real Ones Consortium, like I'm a part of both of those as well. Or like either in some groups that I found through my therapy, then that's community systems. Or it's just like I recognize again how much community has just kind of just driven me, and I look at my family from the community, and so like most of the times, my prayer is more so just being thankful for those communities, because I know that if it wasn't for them, then I wouldn't be where I am. Like it just everything tracks.
Yeah, that's really, really true. I think in the last like post like 2020 on, right? I think that I very similar. I thought I knew what community was. Like I thought I had it in respects, and I did. Like there was like these group of friends that we had. We called ourselves the Walrus Pack. It was based off of a dream I had. I'll tell the dream because I saw the look. All right, so the dream was. All right, so the dream was shout out Russ Pack. The dream is that like we were all in like Antarctica or some cold ass place, and we were on these like ice like caps, but the ice was like breaking apart and we were shrinking. And then there was sharks coming to try and grab us off of there. But like all of us, there was like, we were surrounding each other and protecting each other, like these big walruses, and just like taking out like the sharks, and they couldn't get us. And so I just woke up feeling like this is that group. Like we are protecting each other. We're watching out for each other. And in that group, there's like 10 kids, because me and my partner don't have kids, but I like to have babies in that group. Anyways, but like that was that group for that time span, right? And since then, we've all like moved different places, but like after that, I think I was still hungry, because I think for me, like I've just been in the lone like Black person, or one of very few Black people, for like literally 90% of my life. And it wasn't until like 2020 where it was so lonely. Like I was incredibly lonely, and like all the people that hit me up or like texted me or reached out or I was hanging out with were not Black. And they were just like, oh, I'm so sorry. So it was just like all of this grief and people not understanding even the emotions and grief that I was feeling. And so fast forward to like 2021-ish, I joined the Black Speakers Collective. And then from there, I've joined a bunch of other groups and like meeting so many other Black folks. And like, it has been so healing for me. Like I've just been like so loved on and been able to love on other people and supported, encouraged, all the different things the last like 2-ish years that like, I'm like, man, I have like been missing out as far as like this community aspect, and not really kind of having a general sense of what community is. But like really now, even these virtual communities that I've been a part of has just been like, God damn, bro, like this is just like incredible. And not realizing, very similar to you, like a lot of the things I do, like I am fueled by mainly like community, mainly the people that care and love me and like are pushing me and like damn, you're smart, or damn, you're like, this is a great idea, or like, do that, like, what are you doubting yourself, like, do all the different things. So it's been incredibly transformative.
And I feel like 2020 was also a similar time for me, because there was a specific moment where I recognized all the things that I allowed myself to be indoctrinated in for the sake of work. And so when I graduated college, I told myself I'll be one of few Black people at an organization, and that's just how it's going to be. There were so many definitives of like, or understandings that I thought had to be a certain way for me to move forward, or for me to live by the idea of what I thought success was at the time. And that's when I was like, nah, actually, I don't have to. I don't have to be the only Black person in these organizations. I don't have to take on then the emotional burden of being that only Black person, or being tokenized in so many different ways. And I think once you saw it, and once you kind of just like allowed yourself to just be in that, nah, it doesn't have to be this way, it was hella hard to go back. And since then, it's been hard for me to go back, you know? And so, and then I think I recognized that then, because as that growth happens, it's like when you're in therapy and you start to identify certain triggers, and now every single time you identify that trigger, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I see what's going on here, because now your mind is open. And so I think, again, like, how do we get to those instances and still be able to take like all the bullshit and allow it to silence us? I'm not doing that. Like, I refuse to. Like, what's the point? I don't got time for that bullshit. Like, it's literally so much else happening. World is on fire type of shit. I can't not be myself authentically. And with the asterisk that I'm still growing and understanding and discovering who I am. Because in this moment, I am this person. I might not be that person tomorrow, And so that's also then has to then relate to the way in which I communicate and relate to all the different parts of myself and the world with who I am in that moment.
Yeah. Can we like always hang out? Like, can we just be, can we like hang out at least like once a week? That was just straight word, Theon. And I think you named something that I was feeling very self-conscious about. Is I was telling Lynn's my partner this, just like in a very vulnerable moment. She was helping me put together this workshop that I did yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And it's about this idea of like career joy. And like this thing is not, it's used elsewhere, like career happiness. Like people say that, but people don't say career joy. I looked it up. I'm going to trademark it. That is just mine. Trademark pending. But I was so scared to like say things definitively, right? So to say like, folks, I know folks are experiencing this. I know folks are asking these questions. And I think that, to ask who you are, what your values are, and are you safe are three incredibly important questions for you to enter and experience like true career joy. And I think as I was putting the workshop together, I was admitting that like, I know that like I ran out of like fucks to give when it came to like people like trying to dim my light and like not let me shine, or like even not even give me just the gaslighting, all this stuff. And like, I have experienced incredible amounts of joy in the work that I do, the people that I work with, so on and so forth. After that, like knowing that like all these other things, but like still, like I was having such an incredibly difficult time leaning into this idea that like to encourage other people to do that. If you feel what I'm saying, like I think that's like the whole concept around what I'm doing is like really having people experience what you just like what you named is like you don't have to do this. Like that sense of like martyrdom that you feel like you have to is like, this is just what it takes to be where I'm at. It's like, it's bullshit. Like you don't have to. Like those are like incredibly outdated, never were true for Black folks, any marginalized identity anyways. Cause like they don't give a fuck. They don't care about you. None of these systems were designed for you. And so I just like, you just like named all of the things. Like, I ain't got time. Like, I legitimately
Yeah.
do not have time. Like, why would I invest my energy and effort into this space, whatever space that is? Because like I could be somewhere else. I literally could be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which, when I do my work at consulting work, and I'm just like really, really honest, I'm like, you will lose people because they don't want to work here because you suck. Like, you suck. And like, you don't want to listen, and you don't want to pay attention, and you don't want to be like able to grow and have different perspectives. Like, and millennials, Gen Zs definitely don't give a fuck. Like, they will just not show up. They won't even say anything. They just won't show up. And so like, anyways, I'm going on a tangent, but it's just like, you just named something that was just like so beautiful to me and like really, really affirming in this moment. So I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Theon, we have been going on and on and on about all kinds of things, but I do want to talk about like the work that you do. And you named in the beginning, as you were in your wonderful intro, like all the commas that you have.
Yeah.
And so like, you named that you had a previous role, but I'm curious, like, how did you make this transition into entrepreneurship and wearing all of these different hats for yourself?
Yeah. And so, it started at CSI. And so just, I guess I'm going to try my best to like be concise with this. But I was in tech first. Pause. I was in corporate first. Then I was in tech. I was in tech startups. And then one day I kind of just had enough. And I got a new leader, and I didn't agree with it. And I'm not good at saving face when I don't want to be somewhere. I realize that now. And so I thought I was doing a great job then, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But then my work started to really falter. And then one day I got in an Uber pool, when people still talk to each other, and Uber pool was that place. And so I got in there was this guy, he was wearing like almost like a performer outfit. And I was just like, who's this guy? But like from experiences that I've had, I got new people who were performers. And so I was like, oh, you're performing. He was like, well, something like that. He started asking me questions. I was like, well, what do you want out of life? And I was like, right. And I was
this
like,
deep ass question.
Because I was like asking questions. And so then I was like, yeah, well, I want to meet with people. I want to travel. And he was like, great. So what are you doing right now? And I was like, well, I'm traveling. He was like, great. And do you know me? And I was like, no. I was like, so I'm a new person. Yeah. He's like, well, why can't you have what you want already? And that's a piece where I was like, oh, okay. At the time, I didn't recognize it was a reframe, but it was a reframe that was needed. And if you want to find more, find me. I found him. That was my first life coach. And in that time, he was a person that said, hey, I think your people will be at CSI. I've never been to the one in New York, but I've been to one in Canada, and something seems right. I went there, saw it, and then I volunteered. Fast forward, I ended up working there for the next 3.5 years.
Wow.
When I was there, the entrepreneurs, the different organizations, the change makers, the impact seekers, those were the folks who I was around all the time. And my goal was to, one, yes, help them, because that's what my job was with membership and such. But also, two, it was just to like get a visibility of like what's happening here. And I always say that's the difference. And that was a moment that separates me from some other folks, was that I got a ton of examples in that moment. So even if they weren't like where they were going to be ultimately, or they weren't like, again, whatever success looks like for them, it's individual, it's defined by them. Then that's when I saw, oh, this is what it takes. This is what it looks like when there's an individual entrepreneur. This is after you scale to 5 people. This is after you scale to 15 or 30 or X, Y, and Z. And that's when I was like, okay, this is interesting. But I still didn't have in my head that I could achieve that. Fast forward, pandemic comes. And right before we actually closed during the pandemic, right before we closed, we tried to pivot. And I started doing online virtual production with my colleague, Sarah, at the time. And I was like, oh wait, I like this quite a bit. And so
Mm.
everyone went virtual and said that, like, Zoom fatigue. Nope. I said, well, let's do it. Like, like
Yeah.
it was just different. I got to experience that. I kept one or two clients over that time before I went to my next role, back into tech. And then February of last year, 2022, I abruptly got laid off. And so I
Mm.
didn't know that layoffs were coming. We were a team of 16, and I took the job because the folks were just bomb. Like it was
Mm.
a really good team. But ultimately they had more layoffs, but that first layoff was surprise and everyone was just like, wait, what? And I recognize to be in community is like to be in customer success when customer success first got rolled out. And so
Uh,
folks don't know how to definitives. Organizations have to put intentional ideas and framing and structure around what community means to them. It needs to be built into their DNA, in my opinion.
mm-hmm.
And at the time, it wasn't. And that then reflected on who needs to get cut first. We're
Mm.
looking at budgets. It's back to that sense of line items. And the one thing I never liked was to feel like a line item. And
Mm-hmm.
so in that, once I got laid off, it was difficult. I recognized I had to be able to move through. And because of the type of person that I am, using the rational brain and using like the other piece, I could understand why I got cut from a community perspective, from where the money was from, like, we have this like governing body that's paying for this stuff. But then the other side of me that's like realistic is like, no, like
Yeah.
this could be done so much, such differently,
Yeah.
or in a way that felt better. I don't have lack of a better
Yeah.
word.
No. Yeah.
So
Better is fine.
so once that happened, a lot of people were excited for me. My coach at the time, Marie DeVoe, shout out. I always have to say her name in
Yeah.
space.
Shout out.
And that's also actually how we met. So
Yep. That's right. That's right. Shout out.
She was so proud. She was so proud and excited for me because she saw me through multiple jobs and over
Mm.
multiple years and knew
Mm.
that I would be okay, as well as others knew. But I knew my heart knew that I would figure out, because that's what I do. I figure out a way, but at the time I didn't know. And I
Mm.
think that's when entrepreneurship, I said, okay, well, what are the skills that I have? I can do virtual production. We're in the middle of the pandemic. Folks are still trying to do virtual. Let me
Mm.
see what can launch off.
Yep.
Immediately, I started working with her. I started working and doing with her executive leadership and her coaching program. I then started working with a friend, Viv, who is the head of a thing called Global and Collective, which is a consulting firm for change and culture change within organizations.
Mm.
And it just afforded me opportunities. Like, there's just two people that they already had relationships with me, and then also they had these organizations, and now it was kind of just like, it's yours if you want to be a part of it. So I started doing production for both.
Mm.
And I would tell you, Jonathan, like, at the time, it felt like a movie. It felt like, oh, this is one of the most devastating parts that are, of that movie. Is that time where you're just kind of like, everything is fast moving around you, and you're just kind of there stuck in that kind of like, oh shit, like, word, like, I'm sad, like, I ain't got no money. I mean, I had a severance package, sorry, but like, like
Yeah.
those, and so like those things happened, but then fast forward. And thank God I still had therapy and all these
Mm.
other pieces. Again, my support systems, top notch. So my friends who held me down in those times, yeah,
Mm.
they hurt a lot.
Mm.
But then, like, I was traveling with Marie. Like, before that, I didn't do production this type of way, at the scale. But then I'm traveling with Marie, to different places, and being her producer as she does her keynotes and such, and online stuff. And then with Viv, I got to go to the White House, like,
Like what?
so I think 2 or 3 weeks after I got laid off, and I told Viv, she was like, okay, like, it's gonna be okay, but also, why don't you join this call on Wednesday? Like, you can just join it. It turned out it was a call for MTV. At the time, I didn't know that that's what the contract that she had. I joined the call. they said like they really liked me, you know, and I was just myself. That one was a validating point, by the way.
Yep.
Two, I stepped back, and then you know, so at the time I got picked up to be the producer on this project, and it was a ton. It was, I think it was about 30 or so young people that were making strides within mental health. So I think it was the Youth Mental Health Action Forum. And it was a culmination of the White House and all these other pieces. I didn't know if I was going to go to the White House. I know I was just doing the online programming. And then fast forward, I'm in the White House.
You're in the White House?
Like, what? Wait a minute. This is not a test. We are here. But then I got there, and like, there is a story there about, because I have chronic foot issues, and then I couldn't perform in that type of way. And so all the anxiety and all these other pieces, but it was staffed with therapists on site. And it was the first time that I saw a space that allowed me to, like, I showed up in my deficit and they held me and got me through it. And I was just like, oh shucks, I'm amazed, you know? And so it was, so I saw that. I get several hundred hours of production at this point. And then, you know, also throughout weddings, like one friend asked, another friend found out and asked, and then I did it at an icebreaker at an old organization. This couple was in there and they went to get married. My barber sent me a note a different time, was like, hey, can you marry people? This couple wants to get married. I found out on Thursday, I married them on the Sunday.
Wow.
And then now it's, I'm going on to wedding number 8. And so is all these different things that start to kind of go. Or even with this most recent project, I've been working with Rachel Goldstein, and she's been amazing. I met her at CSI. She was a member. And when I was there, she was also doing large scale events. I've always loved events, but I didn't go into the path yet. And I remember saying I want to work with her, but I told her that. Fast forward to 2023, she calls me and asks me to work with her. You know, and now we're doing, like, you know, we did a Global Citizen Global Summit. Their GC now in September just did one with for A's Foundation, and they're in advertising, and they're the multicultural advertising intern program. But it was dope. Like, you know, Dougie Fresh was a performer. Like, yeah, DJ P9. Like, it was just all these random things. Not random, but like random in my mind, because 2 years ago, none of this trajectory would have made sense to me. You know, I had inklings of things that I liked, but it was then when I chose to say yes after the layoff, when I chose to stay in my discomfort, all these things started happening. And that's what I think of when I think of manifestation and talking things to existence. I do hold that very high because my entrepreneurship is built into, you know, these seemingly unconnected things, but they're all interconnected, and the ways in which, and all the plans like that, it's just started to blossom. And I say that with a big asterisk of, I don't have it understood fully yet. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to build out all these different aspects. I'm still recognizing that if sustainability means marketing, again, back to marketing, I need more of that. I need to learn how to talk about myself and all the websites and all these different things. And so it's a, you know, step into the discomfort, lean in, learn, and to grow, and to exist, and to also accept and let go, and to feel within all these different highs and lows of it. Like, that was the thing I knew was coming, but I didn't know the speed in which entrepreneurship would give you the highs and lows. And sometimes that felt just like, I mean, it would knocked me off of any standing that I had. And I'm just like, okay. And I pulled back because my defense mechanism is just to go silent, you know? And so defense mechanism, coping mechanism usually is the silence, you know? And so then that's when I was like, okay, well, if I continue to just lean in, I'm gonna figure it out. And my community won't let me fail. And so that's where I'm at in my entrepreneurship, and that's how it got started. I hope that was like, I'm not.
No,
like,
listen. I love the scenic route. Also, you're a fantastic communicator, so I feel like everybody's like rocking with what you're saying. There was a lot of moments where just probably folks were just like, yes, Yes. And so it was a movie. That was definitely a show. I
Yeah.
love it. And so what was interesting to me is like, and this is what I was saying about these three questions, right? When we experience something, there could be three questions that we ask ourselves. It's like the who are you? Like this shit sucks. Like even in my own entrepreneurial journey, I remember like the pandemic hit. I was a community manager as well at a co-working space, and I like loved it. I was having so much fun, and the money was solid. Like I mean, it wasn't where I wanted to be, but I'm like full benefits plus like this salary, solid. I'm like great. Um, and then literally the pandemic hit for 3 months after I started, and then all of a sudden my job's not the same. And I think 6 or so months after that, like I was like, I am not going to commute. My home location got closed. Another location was about to close. Like I don't have time for that. Like I'm not, and I'm also, anyways, I'm not going to go into that. Listeners have heard this a lot. It's just like in those moments, like I ask myself these questions, like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you value? Are you safe? And like the hard part about like when you're faced with something difficult, it's to like face it. Like honestly, it's to like some people, and when I mean like face it, acknowledge it, it's like to acknowledge the hurt, the pain, the grief, whatever, like properly grieve.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is to like not trying to like, logic your way out of it, or like don't do anything with it and just move on like it didn't happen. But the hard part about it is to sit with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes share it vulnerably.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just so hard and messy. And like I think the beautiful part of your story is like you chose to do the hard part every single time.
Yeah.
One, because you had an incredible community and support system, which I always encourage people to find your folks. But like you chose to do the hard part every single time. And like, I'm not going to say it worked out because I feel like that puts a bow on it, because there's probably a lot of difficult and messy and devastating parts about your story that you didn't share. But like, there is something about like continuing. And I'm not even going to say persevering. I'm not going to say like any of those things. It's just like, just taking the next step and like not knowing what it is. And sometimes all you got is just this, you just see a dimly lit candle at the end of this incredibly fucking dark tunnel.
Yeah.
But you're in that, you're going in somewhat of that direction. You're going somewhere in the right direction. I just like, yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting too. You say about the candle. Something that moved me. So I mentioned before Wes. His name is Wesley Moore. Shout out Wes. And he, who I do the Time for Healing with, he's a pastor, and I think that when he wrote his dissertation, when he was in seminary, it was about the darkness and the peaks and the valleys. And when I was introduced to that was when I started to really think more about this idea of darkness and how darkness itself is demonized. And it's always looked at it that we have to make a way out of it. Yes. Because sometimes darkness, especially when you're not used to it, it feels like you can be lost. But then there's something to be said about what's made in the dark. And when it comes to light, it's something to be said about, what's made in the valleys. And when you get to those peaks, you understand it more because you recognize just how much perseverance it took, or you recognize how much growth it took, or you recognize how much it took for you to just sit with the moments of sadness. So you mentioned before about when we experiencing these emotions and not to just kind of, my way was to push it. I'm one of the kids early on that was told I was too emotional. So then I stifled my emotions as I got older.
Yep.
And then therapy, it was then to lean into it, to understand that leaning into my emotions didn't mean that I was going to lose it, or it was going to be just too much to handle, or I could never get out of it. And so with the layoff, I intentionally sat with it. I also have to add is that that's not my first layoff. And that was also part of my understanding was, see, I've been laid off in good spots multiple times. I think it was 3 times, and that's more than a lot of folks. And I assume, because I don't know the number statistically, but at a certain point, someone does not want me to be in these organizations until I do what I need to do. And for
Mm,
me, because I am religious, that was God. And that's okay. Well, God doesn't want me to be here. And so
mm,
then there has to be something else as to why and where and how and what this world could even look like, from, how I interact with it. And so I think that's when I recognize, like, again, like, yeah, those are going to be those dark moments, and I suffer from depression,
mm.
candidly. And
Yeah.
so, but I know that after a depressive mode, I can still get past it. I know that I
Mm,
can still be able to work through it. I know that I'm understanding myself now to this feels hella tough right now.
mm-hmm,
And I'm gonna try my best to speak to myself in the best way because I know that my judgment and my shame lives very strong within me. And
mm-hmm,
that has been my journey throughout therapy as well. And so,
mm,
how do I recognize myself and know myself, but also authentically lean into these different opportunities and conversations, even sometimes when it feels like I don't necessarily want to be here,
mm,
and then you kind of lean, and like, oh, wait, and I'm gonna lean further. Oh, wait,
mm-hmm,
yeah, this brings me joy. Dope. Wait, that's an inkling. Let
mm,
me notice that. Wait, let me go a little more into it. A
mm,
little more, a little more. I found my way back to the church because every single time I had an interaction with the church, I felt something so strong, and I knew that
mm.
I had to be there. And then
Yeah.
I ended up giving my first sermon in July
Oh,
about.
wow. Congrats. That's huge.
And so
Yeah.
that's where it was just like, oh, hey, I can do that now. Because as a teenager, I said God didn't want me. The church didn't want me
Mm,
because of who I am, that I don't want it. And so then,
yeah.
then it became, again, back to that reframe. How many
Yep.
times do we have to reframe in our lives to be able to move forward? And for me, that answer is continuously.
Mm,
So if someone expect, so when I find folks too that can give me a good reframe, and
mm.
we can have a great conversation as well, it's going to be a
Yeah.
thing. Like, and, and
Yes.
we're going to cut up all the
Yes.
time because now I recognize, oh, wait, you think critically. You think, and like,
Mm-hmm.
so the
Mm-hmm.
analytical brain is going off on different ways, and that is my language. So I want to speak it, I want to be within it, and also I want to speak possibility with it too, because
Yes. Yes.
possibility within
Yes.
itself is not added on top of the entire happening of the peaks and the valleys and feeling, the highs and the lows. Yeah,
That was, you gave your first sermon in July? Just your first?
yeah. I gave my first. Yeah.
That's just the first? Just one? Are you sure just one?
Listen, my sister's been telling me I've been an advocate my whole life. So if I had
Yes.
something to preach about, we're gonna preach about it.
Hey,
You know,
come on now. Hey, let the
reform.
church say amen. And here's the thing too. I love that too. And I think I've heard that thing about, particularly the thing that stuck out to me that you said was like the darkness piece and like reframing that and rechanging that like thought process, because like that's not the first time I heard that. And
Mhm.
it's just so built in. I mean, the layers and dynamics of like
Mhm.
demonizing and vilifying darkness,
Yeah.
blackness, right? It's just like
Mhm.
multi-layered. You just keep it just a stack because we're both black. So,
Mhm.
but on top of that, I think like it also it also communicates, and I know we got to go, but like it also like I think it does something psychologically too, of like
Yeah.
saying that like any hard emotion, any quote unquote dark time, we need to move and get out of as fast as we possibly can. Like we need
Mhm.
to find the light, get to the light as quickly as possible. And I heard somewhere before that like particularly in the US context, like we do not know how to grieve. Like we don't
Yeah.
know how to grieve. Um and like I think in the context of like grieving happens in so many different contexts, but like
Yeah.
work, friendships, I'll say all sorts of relationships. Like it's just I don't know. There's something about that time where it's hard. There's something about that time where it's like you're just so emotionally raw when you're able to and have the space to. And I think that there's a level of privilege to this too, right? Because not everybody
Mhm.
has the space or ability or even like emotional, um, I guess like safety to do it. So I want to acknowledge that. But I think when we are able to, like, I think that there's so much like that happens there. There's so much that happens there when we're not as frantic to get out of those spaces, and we're able to like just sit there for just a half second and
Yeah.
just like weep, cry. I'm getting emotional right now. It's just weep, cry, like feel. And I think I know why. I think because subconsciously, like my body has felt so overwhelmed emotionally with everything in the last like month that I've just had wave after wave of emotion, just like with work, um, with the Palestinians. And if I'm gonna make no mistake, like it's free Palestine over here, but it's just I know it's a convoluted and very complex issue, but the death of innocent people is just like horrible. But
Yeah.
It's just so, and then on top of just so much, like there's just so much that like that I just the level of like I don't even know where I'm going with this, like grief and like complexity and like messiness. Like it's not everything has to be tidy, not everything has to be like clean, not everything has to be like bright and shiny. And I think the idea that that is the way that we exist, it's not healthy. It's not, and I say healthy. I'm put that in quotes, like healthy. It's not. I'll say this: healthy is not. Healthy feels definitive. It is not. It doesn't feel real. Like it doesn't. I don't connect with that. Like I'm not always polished. I'm not always clean. So I just like that reframe of like of the darkness. Like we're fed that idea that darkness is bad. That is, we need to avoid it. We need to hurry up and get out of it. But yeah, like just like maybe that needs to be a reframe for us.
And
yeah,
I would even, and I think parts of what you said, Jonathan, about that not polish and not how it has to look, there's a thread there on perfectionism. And recognizing that if perfectionism is in the room, then you're probably not at your best. Because at the end of the day, it's damaging. It gives us these like unattainable heights or unattainable ideas of what it needs to look like, and that it has to all look a very certain way based on who said it and why they got the power to say it in the first place. And so I think there's that. I think that it does also talk to, again, in that darkness. I like that piece of like it always tells us that we have to run away from the dark, or who's afraid of the dark. Like it was a whole TV show. I don't even know if you could put that in because of license rights, but who knows? You know, but the way in which it's socialized, we've been socialized for a lot of things that don't serve us. And so finding a way and going towards a way that helps you to move forward as long as it's not at the detriment of others, and recognizing that that growth can happen in so many different ways and on so many different timelines and all these different pieces. Like, no, we're writing actively, you know, what our history looks like and what the change starts to look like. So I'm going to lean in, and I'm going to say that now singular. I'm going to lean into all the different ways, all the I don't knows, all the I wishes, all the possibilities, all the manifestations. I'm going to lean into all the different things because at this point, all the other things are fucked. And so I need to have my own formula, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to say this and then we absolutely have to go. I'm asking one more question after this, but it's like this idea that I've started to play with this idea of career joy is that professionalism is requiring us to disembody ourselves, like to live disassociated from like our authentic selves and like quote unquote work selves, because like those two people are actually different, right? Like any marginalized community, any like, and I say marginalized community with air quotes, right? But any marginalized community could actually do that in real time, right? What they're actually saying is like, leave all of your marginalizations at the door. We want you to show up. We want you to work. We want you to do this, go home. And at any point you try and do change, any point you try and like push the envelope, do any significant like damage to the status quo, like you got to go, or you'll be isolated, whatever, like we'll just stay in your corner, right? And so like I just refuse. Like I refuse. And to your point, like it is, professionalism is just at the root of it, right? It's professionalism is a branch, and I put professionalism because who says that? Like who is it? Who's creating those rules, norms, and social beliefs, right? is at the core of it is white supremacy, like whiteness, all those different things, right? And when we really like look at it, so we're gonna stop because I've already kept you past the time that I said. But this has been wonderful. The last question that I want to ask you is, what are you excited to share with the world?
What am I excited to share?
Yeah, either that you're doing or something maybe even you want to promote. What are you excited to share with the world?
I'm excited to share through my own experiences. One, everything is interconnected. That's real.
Yeah.
Two, that choosing a life of joy is difficult, but it's also rewarding. And through those exploits, through my understandings and through my learnings, I want to say look out, because there will be events in the future that I create that will center healing. That's in person, virtual. I'm going to explore more around what my stance within religion looks like, how I'm connecting and showing up for others. I'm just going to say watch this space. Like, I don't have it figured out right now, but 6 months ago, I didn't have it figured out, and then something else happened, and then something else new happened. If I catch up with me every 2 weeks, then something is going to look different every 2 weeks. So watch this space. Feel free to follow me at Theon is free. If you're looking to get married, talk to the camera now. If you're looking to get married, what's good?
Reggie, clip that right there.
I create some moments and experiences. My name is Theon Freeman, and I'm here to create your special moment. Yeah. Is that marketing? Is that too much?
That's it.
No, I think that's stop plying with me. You know?
I think that's what they call marketing gold right there. I think
that's the marketing. That's the marketing.
That's marketing gold right there. Theon, thank you so much for coming through. I think when I envisioned this show, like literally from jump, like these are the kinds of conversations that like I dream of having. Like I literally dream of like if I could have a conversation that's like so nuanced and just asking questions and thinking critically and just being okay with not knowing, and then we just have a hell of a good time. Like this is it. So incredibly impactful for me. This is literally, y'all, this is like the second time me and Theon are talking. The first time it was only supposed to be 30 minutes. We almost talked for 2 hours. So I just love that this is just easy. And if I'm ever in New York, if you're ever in LA, hit me up. You might have you got a place to sleep and everything, all those things. But thank you so much.
Say less.
Yeah, we got a bed. It's comfortable. I make good coffee. All the things.
Listen, I'll book a flight. You watch. Okay, we out here.
Oh my God, yeah. So all the things. But thank you again for coming on. Truly, seriously, this is a blessing for real. Yep.